wife working in a hangar. She was used to that racket, as she'd spent the last year on RAF bases.
The squadrons are all over the shop. Do I have to go to Manston or Rochford?
No, the NAFI vans take the food there. You just have to go to the dispersal points on this airfield. OK, I think you've seen everything now. Do you drive? This would have been a blooming stupid question before the war, but now lots of girls in the WAF, the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, had been trained to drive. She was one of them, as delivering the larger items ordered by the mechanics for the aeroplanes when she was still working in the stores was impossible on a bicycle.
I can. Learned a few months ago.
Good. Then today you can take the sandwiches and thermos flasks to those waiting to be scrambled. Those nearest get half an hour to dash across to the mess hall and grab something to eat. Then the next squadron comes, and so on. Only those with their kites parked on the far perimeters have food delivered. The kitchen was a hive of activity. Half a dozen girls, wearing white overalls and with white squares tied like turbans on their heads, was busy preparing the midday meal. The girls cleaning wore navy blue button-through overalls and clogs. Nancy had already been issued with hers, and she'd turned them up, and they were neatly stored in a locker waiting for her to change.
Do I change to deliver the grub?
Yes, put on your white overalls. You're going to be making the sandwiches and filling the flasks. You have to take them in a couple of hours, so you'd better get a move on. She recognised some of the girls as they shared a dormitory. The women's hostel was up Sutton Lane, off the camp completely, nowhere near the blokes. The barracks for the men was a mile away. The other girls were a cheerful bunch, and were happy to tell her where everything was kept. Just before 12 o'clock, the sandwiches were ready, neatly wrapped in greaseproof paper and carefully labelled with the contents. The thermos flasks were full. 4 had sugar in and 2 didn't. It was lucky that those 2 had red tops, so she'd know the difference. Everything was piled into large wicker trays. Being short made it difficult for her to grip the basket handles properly, but she staggered out with the first one and shoved it in the back of the van. On her return with the second, a couple of officers saw her struggling. "Allow us to assist you, fair maiden. It wouldn't do for you to drop the sustenance meant for our comrades," the tallest of them said, with a lovely smile as he removed the sarnies and that from her arms.
"Tar ever so. I nearly dropped the bleeding lot last time."
They walked away laughing, and she wished she could talk proper like them and not swear all the time. Her best friend, Jane, were always telling her off for using bad language. Nancy scrambled onto the driver's seat. The seat wouldn't budge, and her legs was too short to reach the pedals properly. She reckoned she'd manage if she sat right on the edge and never met nothing, and didn't have to brake hard. Tommy Smith hadn't needed to go on any training courses when he'd transferred from maintaining a bomber to Hornchurch, where he now had a spit allocated to him. His pilot, Sergeant Pilot Harry Jones, was a good bloke and an excellent flyer. It was a pleasure to keep his kite in working order. He'd been fortunate to be allocated a Spitfire and not a Defiant. The Spits were everybody's favourite kite. "Oi, Tommy, isn't that your fiancée driving that van?" Ronnie Atkins poked him with the spanner and gestured towards the van heading for the tented dispersal points at the far side of the airfield. "You're right, it's Nancy. I didn't know she was back from her course. This must be her first day on duty." He scrambled down from the wing of the Spit and stepped out from the hangar so she could see him. She waved, but didn't stop. He'd catch up with her when they were both off tonight. Sometimes he and Ronnie had to work all night to do maintenance and repairs and have the kite ready for when their pilot was on duty again. Harry's Spit was in tip-top condition, unlike some of the others that had returned from the last sortie full of holes. Today was just routine maintenance. This was essential and had to be carried out whenever the flyer was off duty. "She's delivering char and wads," Ronnie said. "Do you think she'll have any over for us? My belly thinks my throat's been cut." "Doubt it. The blighters will be as starving as us. If we crack on, then we'll get this finished in a couple of hours, and we can go to the mess and get something to eat." He was in the cockpit a bit later, when Nancy's lovely face appeared beside him. She was standing on the wing.
"I got me stripe. Passed with flying colours, I did. Here, I saved you and Ronnie a couple of sarnies. They ain't got no labels on, so I ain't sure."